There was a tragedy here at Flying Baron Estates yesterday at 10 a.m. involving the lead guitar player, Randy Rhoads, 25-year-old talented guitar player for the Ozzy Osbourne Band.
Randy Rhoads wasn't just a guitarist. He was the prodigy who redefined rock guitar forever. Yet his meteoric rise ended in one of music's darkest tragedies. Official reports call it a reckless joyride gone wrong. But insiders whisper about chaos in the cockpit, hidden health issues, and a pilot with a dangerous past. Why did Randy, who feared flying, step onto that plane? What really happened in those final moments? Today, we uncover the clues and theories fans may find more unsettling than the crash itself. The crash that shattered rock.
While some members of the Ozzy Osbourne Band slept in their tour bus parked next to the house, the other three buzzed overhead, circling the bus 3 times. On the 4th time, they didn't make it.
On the morning of March 19, 1982, tragedy struck at Flying Baron Estates in Leesburg, Florida. What was supposed to be a quick stop to repair the tour bus's faulty air conditioning became one of the darkest days in rock history. At around 10 a.m., a small Beechcraft Bonanza F-35, piloted by 36-year-old Andrew Aycock, took off with 2 passengers, 25-year-old guitar prodigy Randy Rhoads and 58-year-old seamstress Rachel Youngblood. Within minutes, the plane spiraled out of control. Its wing clipped Ozzy Osbourne's parked tour bus, sending the aircraft crashing into a nearby garage in a fiery explosion that slain everyone on board instantly. The devastation was witnessed by several band members, including keyboardist Don Airey, who had stepped outside to take photographs of the flight. Through his telephoto lens, Airey noticed something chilling. The plane wasn't smoothly buzzing overhead as expected. Instead, it appeared to be struggling. He described erratic wing movements, sudden dips, and what looked like a commotion inside the cockpit. Sensing something was wrong, he lowered his camera just moments before the plane clipped the bus and plunged nose first into the ground. Airey would later call the scene apocalyptic, a nightmare of smoke, fire, and wreckage that burned itself into his memory. What makes the story even more haunting is that Randy Rhoads had always hated flying. Friends and bandmates often recalled how he avoided small planes whenever possible. Yet that morning, he reluctantly agreed to join Aycock and Rachel, not for thrill or adventure, but simply to take aerial photos of the estate for his mother, who had always been his greatest supporter. What was supposed to be a quiet gesture of love became his final, fatal choice. But the crash itself is only part of the story. The decisions leading up to that moment reveal an even darker truth. Choices that changed everything. Sometimes, it's the smallest choices that carry the heaviest weight. For bassist Rudy Sarzo, one simple decision on the morning of March 19, 1982, still echoes more than 4 decades later. Rudy had been offered a seat on that second flight alongside Randy Rhoads and Rachel Youngblood. Normally, he would have gone. He and Randy were inseparable on tour, often sharing meals, late-night adventures, and side trips. But exhaustion won out. Rudy declined, choosing instead to rest on the bus. Minutes later, he was jolted awake by an explosion that would haunt him forever.
And thank you for doing this for Randy. I mean, this is anytime that myself, yourself, and everybody else from that knew Randy or is a fan of Randy, when we speak on his behalf, it carries his name, forward, in his memory.
Rudy's survivor's guilt runs deep. He later admitted he believed Randy may have tried, in his final moments, to steer the doomed aircraft away from the tour bus. The crash damaged the bus's roof, but never penetrated its side. Rudy has long insisted that had the plane been even a few feet lower, it would have obliterated the entire vehicle, slaying everyone inside. In his heart, he's convinced Randy's last act was one of instinctive courage, sacrificing himself to save his bandmates. Rachel Youngblood, the band's beloved seamstress, also wasn't eager to fly that morning. She had a known heart condition and expressed hesitation. But Andrew Aycock, the tour bus driver turned pilot, reassured her there would be no stunts. "It will be a calm flight," he reportedly promised. Those words persuaded both Rachel and Randy to step on board, believing they would be safe. And those questions only deepened when a bandmate revealed a shocking theory years later, one that rewrote the tragedy entirely. Bob Daisley's chilling theory. For years, the official explanation of Randy Rhoads' death was simple, reckless flying, and poor judgment. But decades later, former Ozzy Osbourne bassist Bob Daisley presented a theory that turned the story on its head. According to him, the crash may not have been caused by Aycock's stunts at all. Instead, Daisley suggested that Rachel Youngblood, the band's seamstress, may have suffered a heart attack mid-flight, and in her sudden collapse, she unintentionally forced the controls of the dual-yoke cockpit. The Beechcraft Bonanza F-35 wasn't like every small plane. It had controls on both sides of the cockpit. If Rachel slumped forward or pressed against the pedals during a medical emergency, she could have thrown the plane into a dive. And once the Beechcraft's infamous V-tail began spinning, recovery would have been nearly impossible, even for a trained pilot. Daisley pointed to one overlooked fact. Rachel's autopsy revealed evidence of a heart attack prior to impact. She had been hesitant to board the plane that morning precisely because of her condition. Aycock reportedly promised her a gentle ride, no loops, no dives, nothing that would put strain on her. That reassurance, coupled with Randy's plan to take aerial photographs for his mother, convinced her it would be safe. But if her heart failed mid-flight, the situation could have spiraled in seconds. But while that theory paints the crash as a tragic accident, Andrew Aycock's past points to something far more sinister. The dark past of Andrew Aycock. When investigators pinned the tragedy on poor judgment, they weren't just talking about the stunts that morning. Andrew Aycock, the man at the controls, had a shadowy past that made him the worst possible person to be flying that plane. His aviation medical certificate, required to prove he was fit to pilot, had expired, legally grounding him from carrying passengers. Yet that didn't stop him from climbing into the cockpit of a Beechcraft Bonanza he didn't even own. The aircraft had been taken without permission from its hangar at Flying Baron Estates, another reckless decision in a chain of them. Toxicology reports revealed something even more disturbing. Aycock had cocaine in his system at the time of the crash. Witnesses said he had been up partying the night before, fueling suspicions that he was impaired. This shattered the image of a calm pilot giving his friends a simple aerial ride. Instead, it suggested a man under the influence, making dangerous choices with lives in his hands. Even worse, this wasn't Aycock's first brush with aviation disaster. 6 years earlier, he had been involved in another fatal crash in the United Arab Emirates. Details remain murky. But the fact alone raises chilling questions. How could the same man be linked to two fatal incidents? And while Aycock's demons cloud the official story, the most heartbreaking part is what Randy himself was planning just before fate intervened. The future Randy never saw.
Randy was a great guitar player and co-wrote Crazy Train with me. I mean, that point in my life, I'm sure he was sent from somewhere else, because if it wasn't for Randy Rhoads, I know I wouldn't be here. If anything, it was the true musician truest musician I've ever known, because
by 1982, Randy Rhoads was standing at a crossroads. Though his blistering guitar work had cemented him as one of heavy metal's brightest stars, his heart was pulling him in a different direction. Friends and family recall that Randy had been seriously considering stepping away from the exhausting grind of touring. His dream wasn't more fame or more sold-out arenas. It was to pursue classical music studies at UCLA. He wanted to follow his mother's footsteps in academia, deepen his knowledge of theory and composition, and eventually teach the next generation. For Randy, music was more than performance. It was a lifelong discipline. This shift wasn't a passing thought. He had already begun inquiries into programs, and his mother was involved in early conversations with the university. While Ozzy Osbourne's band roared on with chaos and spectacle, Randy quietly planned a future that looked nothing like the one fans imagined. He wasn't walking away from music, he was walking deeper into it, chasing the roots of what inspired him to pick up a guitar as a child. His bond with Ozzy made the tragedy even heavier. After leaving Black Sabbath, Ozzy had been adrift, his career in doubt. Randy's classical meets metal style revived him, producing Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, albums that remain classics. In his autobiography, Ozzy described Randy as a gift from God, admitting that losing him almost made him quit music entirely. Their connection was more than creative. It was a balance of chaos and calm, energy and discipline. Randy Rhoads' death remains one of rock's most haunting mysteries. Was it a reckless stunt, a medical emergency, or something far darker? Fans may never agree, but the legend of Randy lives on, immortal in every riff, every solo, every note he left behind. What do you think really happened that morning in Florida? Share your theories in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more untold rock stories. And don't miss our next video. It uncovers an even darker secret from music history.